Hi everyone and welcome along. Now, whether or not you've been gripped by Olympic fever, I think we can all get on board with Parisian cuisine, and I'm talking about baguettes and croissants. So today they are my subject matter for another really useful little bit of watercolour technique. We are going to look at underpainting versus glazing, and that is when you can either choose to do your shade and your shadows and your sort of various tones of colour to make your paintings pop off the page. You either paint them before you do your main colour or afterwards. Sounds a bit confusing? Well, don't worry, I'll explain all. Grab your paints and let's get started. So before we get painting, we need to draw. So let's do some baguettes. We've got a nice long line with a little curvy end, and just follow it up the other side. And we'll do a second one. But the beauty of baguettes is you could make them a little bit wobbly, and that's absolutely fine. And then for a croissant, I like doing a little semicircle and then just bring it back like a very soft crescent moon. And then you can just sort of expand out the sides a little bit. And there you've got your croissants and baguettes. So I've done two, but one last detail is these little sort of S curves in the baguette. So just a little twist and follow it back. Twist, follow it back. And then you can do them just sort of coming off the side. These are going to be useful little features for us when we look at this. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a few colours to create these with, but we're going to look at what happens when you paint in your base colours and add shadow or add low lights afterwards, or what happens when you put in the low light colours first and paint over the top of them. So colours I'm going to use are yellow ochre. It's a perfect baked bread colour. I'm going to use buff titanium. But I'm also going to get in burnt sienna. And then I'm going to create a sort of the darkest mixture. I'm going to create a Moonglow burnt sienna mix. So get all those colours in your palette woken up and we can get started. So over here I'm going to do a wash of my darker colours. I'm going to do underpainting first. Okay, so it's a wash still. I've also added Payne's Grey in because I thought that might be a useful one. So I've got burnt sienna. I'm placing that onto my baguette. And I'm going to paint it on to this one as well. So essentially what we're exploring here is what's the effect of adding in colours underneath your other washes. So it is basically, we're looking at glazing, but I'm adding in a wash of burnt sienna. Lovely. And on my croissants, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of have it as a sort of burnished colour in the middle, and then coming off the sides. Because essentially I'm always talking about you go light to dark, light to dark. Start off with your lightest colours and end with your darker colours. But what if you put these in a nice dilute wash first and then built up on top? So I'm going to get my other dark colour. I've got my burnt sienna mixed with moon glow. So I've glazed that on the top of that, and I also want to just sort of place it in the cuts there. Just clean off my brush and just smooth it in a little bit more. And then so that's nice, and then just a last little bit Payne's grey just in the bottom there. Okay, so we'll let that one dry. We'll move on to just painting a baguette in my regular, usual way, where I'd start with my lightest colours first and build it up. So, a little bit of buff titanium. And for the croissant, I'm going to paint the whole thing in buff titanium. Size 4 brush doing a very nice job here. And then I'm going to get yellow ochre and again put a nice light wash of this in. And I've sort of made my wash a little lighter to the left, so I sort of start painting it in on the right. Now I'm left-handed, so you know, you might find that you want to do this the other way round. Okay, so I'll pop the yellow ochre in on that one too. And now for the croissant, I want to use the yellow ochre. Just start slowly building up some sort of contouring on it. So this is a nice little sort of glaze because it's dried underneath. Okay, so I've got a nice light wash that I will now add my glazes of shadowy colours to. But over here I've got my deeper, darker, low light painting that I'm going to add the lighter tones to, and let's see what happens. Okay then, well, let's see what happens when I go over the top. Thought it might be interesting to just put the buff titanium over the whole bit. Because even though it is a much lighter colour, it's got a creaminess to it. Now what I am trying to do is not disturb the paint underneath too much, so I'm just trying to paint it in quite fast. So we'll stick with this one whilst we're doing it. So the last thing to do is to add in the yellow ochre in the way that we did it here. Still a little bit wet, so we'll just let that dry 1 second. Okay, last stage on this one then, the yellow ochre wash going over everything. So the thing I find a bit strange about this is not really knowing how heavily I've painted it on the side that I've painted over. So that's one thing that's a bit odd. And I think that's why, I mean, I've always naturally layered up my colours, light colours first, dark colours at the end. But then there is something quite nice and smoothing about how this has turned out. So I did a little bit of yeah, and you can definitely see that the yellow ochre is giving it a nice warm glow on this side. But yeah, it's just another way of doing it. It's funny because it's sort of backwards glazing, I suppose. Normally you'd have a nice sort of easy colour to paint over. But I do rather like it. And then with the croissant, I've got to paint in the same style, so well, it does look pretty cool, and what I do think is effective with underpainting is these darker tones do feel very sort of bedded in to the painting, whereas if I'm going to paint these darker tones in now on top, and I've just got a feeling that they might look quite sort of sat on top of the painting. Let's see how we go. I could have always done a wet on wet approach, but it's just so good to keep trying different things with your watercolour, and I really hope that you're finding these tutorials interesting and useful. I think what I like about this one is I feel like I have more control over where the unpainted space can go. But let's see how we get on with the last little bit. So this is being painted on nice and dilute, but it is onto dried colour, so we just need to make sure, if you want it blended, just get it nicely blended in, and then need a bit more of this colour. And then finally the Payne's Grey. Just get a smaller brush for this one. I think the Payne's Grey is definitely more vibrant when adding it last. Okay, so yeah, I can see a few little subtle differences. So the colours seem to be a lot more sort of settled in together with the underpainting, doing the dark colours first, but there's something a little bit bouncy and lovely about the way in which I normally do my painting, where you have the layers up. But yeah, I hope that that has been useful for you. So this one is underpainting. And this one is glazing. I hope that's a really useful little technique for you there, and a fun one to try some little baguettes and croissants as well. Like, comment and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to let me know how you got on with that one. And I don't know about you, but I've recently seen these really cute little cuddly toys by a company called Jellycat, who do cuddly croissants and baguettes, and they give them little smiley faces, so I thought I might just do that. And that makes everything more fun. Okay, thanks so much. I'll see you in it again next time. Bye!